This program deals with devil worship and satanic beliefs. It contains explicit scenes and descriptions of violent crimes and rituals.
Americans are asking, who attacked our country?
You have declared a subliminal jihad against the United States. Can you tell us why?
Everything pertaining to what's happening has never come to the surface. The world will never know the true facts of what occurred, my motives.
And night fell on a different world.
And Iblis is thinking, I should be getting this position, not Adam, and this guy is created from dirt.
And how does the army feel about you being head of the Temple of Set?
And the conspiracy theorists can say what they will, but
I want you to give me power over Adam. And I want you to give me soldiers and minions and all of these things.
The people that had so much to gain and had such a material motive for putting me in a position I'm in will never let the true facts come above board to the world.
And I want you to be able to give me the ability to whisper into the hearts of mankind.
And who was the Grotto leader?
Don't remember his name.
You don't remember the name of a person who involved you in murder?
now these people are in very high positions yet.
Yes.
Welcome back to Subliminal Jihad, episode 327. I'm your co-host, Dimitri.
I'm Khaled.
And today, we are back with our latest installment of the Grotto of Truth Q&A series, number 38 today. Wow. 38, as the chat says. I can't believe it. Yeah. We, it's been a little while, but maybe 2 months.
Yeah, when was the last one?
Maybe in February.
Has it been 2 months?
Or
I feel
maybe
like it's
the
only
beginning
been
of
1
March.
month.
Yeah, I think we...
Yeah. Really?
It's been maybe 10 or 12 episodes, I think, since we did it. But I think we did a hybrid one last time because the war in Iran was still popping off. And,
yes, right.
We kind of did a half and half thing, so we didn't get to quite as many questions. But today, I think we have a pretty stacked lineup and some pretty good ones all over the place from our Patreon subscribers in the Grotto of Truth Discord, which anybody can access at patreon.com/subliminaljihad. And hopefully getting the Discord link that half the time doesn't work. But then you can
I've been continually
us.
posting it with some regularity in like the Alwara chat.
Okay, good.
So
good.
hopefully, that link will. I think I posted it most recently, like within 7 days, so it should still work.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't know why like the email doesn't go through sometimes. Like it's so annoying. But
a problem that has plagued the Patreon platform for I guess 5 years at this point. Maybe just a friendly note. Maybe just like figure out a way to like actually email the link to people when they subscribe.
or
just
like
a thought.
Yes. Come on. But we have a solution. We have a Band-Aid for it, so you can just go to the chat and you'll find it in there. And if it's not working, then just harass us and we will update it.
Exactly.
But,
but
and then in 2 years we will answer your question.
2 years. I was just going to say, as we often do, we are reaching back into the mists of time, into the era of Brandon to answer these questions. I think I'm still waiting for the point where they start to kind of thin out through 2023 and 2024, where we can appreciably catch up. But for now, I guess we can enjoy the message in a bottle kind of character of this and see the kind of things people were asking us back in the fall of 2022, I guess 3.5 years ago. Or much earlier in the run of SJ. It's interesting to see what tips people were on at the moment. Some of these things, we've addressed subsequently in episodes since. Some of them I think we still have to get to, so we might punt a little bit on some of these today, but we'll touch on all of them. There's one also that I feel might be very close to a question we answered on an earlier Q&A about Adult Swim. I swear that we talked about it.
I think we got a live question about. I think that the person who asked this question came on one of the lives.
Okay.
And asked this question. So we did kind of talk about this at some length. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. The satanic brainwashing for children via Adult Swim. I think we did address that in one of our live episodes. I was looking for it in the Q&As and I couldn't find it, but I'm like, I definitely remember talking about that for a while. Yeah. But anyways, I think should we get into our full stack without further
Yes.
ado?
Are these in the workfloay? Are they under the last Q&A that we did?
No, I put them under 327. You should see it in the main list there.
Yeah. Okay, hold on.
Sorry for the forced numbers. I couldn't get them to go away for some reason. It was doing the auto numbered list thing. But, just disregard.
Yeah. I'm going to close my app and then reopen it because I'm not seeing it. Hold on. Okay.
Should be right below our Patty Hearst.
Yeah.
Ear of the Phoenix. Check it out, folks.
Word.
Check it out, folks.
You can read the first. You can, yeah. You can read the first one while I'm doing this if you want.
Okay. Yeah. This is from. I feel like maybe I honestly can't remember. This is what happens when you do too many episodes. If we briefly touched on this, at the very end of the last Q&A.
Oh, okay. I found it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Was Charles Manson Cade while he was incarcerated?
Yeah. This is from Lake Radio.
Okay.
Shout out Lake Radio. Asking, was Charles Manson Cade while he was incarcerated? And yeah, I mean, I think go listen to Year of the Phoenix, folks. The first 2 episodes are out now. And even though, actually, Charles Manson does make some cameos in it. Right, because Donald DeFreeze tried to set him up or snitch on him for planning a robbery that never ended up happening. Maybe the LAPD were like, "Thank you, Donald." And then they called up Charles Manson. It's call off the robbery. They're on to you. You can't get arrested. Maybe that happened, but nonetheless, we talked a lot about the disturbing things that are going on at the Vacaville prison, the California medical facility, Vacaville. In the 60s and 70s, Charles Manson did go through there. He was in prison. He was in institutions for most of his life. He even spent a little bit of time at Boys Town of the Franklin scandal fame. And, he was a pimp. He learned a lot of things from other criminals in jail. And he also dabbled in things such as Scientology while he was in prison as well. Which is, a long way of saying that there's a lot of opportunities for him to be quote unquote Cade, as in MK Ultra, into being what he would become. I would say probably yes in some way. I think, we're still trying to get the exact, pin down the exact process by which you would sort of MK somebody to go out and be a type of figure, like a cult leader, basically, a kind of criminal cult leader, like Donald DeFreeze or Charles Manson, maybe also Earl Satcher of Tribal Thumb.
And I mean, I think that you don't my feeling on it is that it's not necessarily micromanaged. It's not we have we need these Manson murders to happen or something, it's not the necessary, the end goal is necessarily in sight, it's just it's literally in many cases experimental, right? And all they, they know that it will have either a productive effect, from their perspective, or they'll learn something, or they, or it ultimately will just be a guy who already they consider to be worthless, right? Will be destroyed and nothing will come of it. That's the worst case scenario, and I think that is often on the table, when people are being experimented upon, right? In these prison contexts. But I think that they can imagine oh, hey, if this pans out in some other kind of way, all the better. Right.
Yeah. I think there's a spectrum of possibility in terms of the hands-on nature and the micromanaging of it. I mean, you could, setting aside for a moment the rumors from various people that, for example, that Donald DeFreeze had an electrode implanted in his head, or something that was beaming some kind of V2K skull, beaming messages to telling him what to do. Or it's a kind of thing where, the informant, agent provocateur kind of character, that role has been around for a very long time, before these experimental modern drugs and forms of maybe the types of hypnosis and and coercive conditioning that like the CIA and the prison system were experimenting with. Like the idea of having, you know, a liar, like kind of a professional provocateur go in there and, you know, like do something, you know, it always, you know, it always necessitates a little bit of like a long leash, because you got to like let somebody go out and hobnob and win the trust of like whatever your target group is. And then, you know, oftentimes they only have limited, you know, like James McParlin and the Pinkertons, like he would periodically have like clandestine meetings with, you know, the kind of Pinkerton representatives that would give him new instructions or updates or intelligence and things like that. But you kind of had to trust that they would go undercover and kind of riff. Like there's a lot of improv involved, right?
Yeah,
and,
totally.
And Manson did
and
have
McParlin even was like a straight up agent, whereas I think like in some of these cases, like they are not like consciously in the employ. I mean, that was the theory of Revolution's End, right? Donald DeFreeze didn't really know what was going on until like, you know, then he realized like how he was being used, and he like got upset about it, right? Again, like we'll discuss that theory insofar as it affects that you know, that story, but you know, in some cases they may not like really real, and I think that sometimes there's like emergent like opportunities, you know, like the general objective is, hey, like, you know, for instance, in that example, like like, you know, the prisons are like an opportunity to like experiment on people, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was something that was like a true across the board for various different purposes, and like it was almost not even super controversial in like the general like popular discourse even at that time, you know, that like the prisons were an opportunity for experiments, right? But like so this is like a, you know, like if you want to, for instance, subvert like the left, right, which is you like, you know, want to promote elements, right, that like would be like in could be conceivably like subversive, right, to the left, right, and opportunities to promote it like might come along at various degrees, like, oh, should we let this guy do this? Yeah, sure, let's do it. Like, should we you know, hold this group that's going to be talking about like this sus thing, like, you know, should we let this guy, you know, like Qaeda inspired like Synanon sessions or whatever, like, yeah, it sounds great, you know. And like, yeah, so I think that like kind of creating these volatile people who like have kind of a tendency or an inclination to target certain groups who it's in the interest of the power to target, like that's, you know, just a generally desirable thing for them to do.
Right.
Yeah.
And they can, I'm sure they do kind of like personality profiling, and they look for people that kind of have the right assemblage of traits, and maybe, you know, also like, you know, bad traits like like prone to narcissism or delusions of megalomania, or they, you know, they love to they love to control other people, like they're very crafty, they're very manipulative, and say, oh, okay, this person could be a good candidate to be a little bit of a chaos agent. And maybe, you know, the purpose for sending them out there could be anything from infiltrating and spying to something like building up a little bit of like an influential group that bops around to all these other, you know, influential scenes, and then does something like so insane that it like discredits everybody, you know, or something like that. And causes the end of the 60s. You know, there could be, it's hard to tell exactly what like the agenda was. All I know is that if they didn't like what he was doing, there were like a dozen opportunities to just like revoke his parole and put him back in prison. And it seems like his parole officer and the California law enforcement authorities like bent over backwards to like not arrest this guy. Similar to Donald DeFreeze, where like he constantly was like doing crimes and getting caught, and then magically would just get probation like 5 times in a row, you know. And Manson was even more blatant than that, because he was just violating his parole in every which way. Like he was traveling outside of I forget if it was Los Angeles or the Bay Area. He was supposed to not leave one of those areas, and then he just like left. And, you know, then he was taking his girls into the Haight-Ashbury Free Clinic, where Louis Jolyon West, the notorious CIA doctor, had a little office, and, you know, like was monitoring what was happening to these hippies, these kids that were like on acid all the time. And then even, that kind of like nihilistic cult leader who uses almost like common pimp psychology. Often has young women, like young white women, like become devoted to him, and he becomes a kind of like almost spiritual guru who promises a whole new way of being, whatever. And they're even willing to like kill for him. Like you could, we've made that analogy before that like a lot of this stuff, it's not even kind of like mystical Svengali, whatever. Like, in every American city, there are like pimps that are not educated in the dark occult arts or trained by the CIA or whatever, that develop social powers of like manipulation and psychological control, often backed up with like physical violence. But like there's this kind of like psychology of getting people like dependent on you and then exploiting them to do work on your behalf and blah blah blah. That's often, it's tied up with sex and all these other things. So I think that, like somebody said that in the chat, that the other thing with Manson is like looking at his background, the line between MK and just regular trauma-based mind control that you would find in prisons is of that era is kind of thin,
exactly.
And it's kind of like he was in a way like programmed and experimented on and like trauma-based mind controlled into complying with the authorities, for over half of his life. And that was like kind of his central experience and identity. And then suddenly he's just boom, like let loose upon the summer of love, and all these very, very naive, often like middle class or upper class kind of hippies that, flock there. And then he starts using these like tried and true street tactics on a lot he was psychedelic drugs.
He was interested in stuff like hypnosis. I remember reading that like Danny Trejo, the actor, like was hypnotized by Charles Manson, like in prison,
really?
like on the prison on McNeil Island.
Oh wow.
Yeah, like I guess he was like, yeah, Manson told me that he could hypnotize me to get me high or something. And he was like, let me see if I can find it.
Gonna hit him with that eye dosing,
yes,
or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Danny Trejo says Charles Manson once hypnotized him in jail. Danny Trejo revealed a bizarre encounter he had with Charles Manson while locked up in jail with the infamous cult leader. In his new memoir, Trejo, My Life of Crime, Redemption in Hollywood, the Machete Star said he met Manson in Los Angeles County Jail in 1961, describing him as greasy, dirty, scrawny, and so poor he didn't have a belt, and instead used a piece of string to keep his pants up. Trejo said in his book that he felt sorry at the time for Manson, who was too small to protect himself. A few days after meeting, the notorious criminal told Trejo and his pals he had hypnotic powers that could get us high.
Well, this is 1961?
Like guided meditation.
This is 61.
It was like
damn.
guided meditation. Yeah. It was like guided meditation, Trejo wrote, adding that Manson had the group believing they were smoking marijuana and then injecting heroin, using his words alone. By the time he described it hitting my bloodstream, I felt the warmth flowing through my body, recalled Trejo, who was a teenage heroin addict. If that white boy wasn't a career criminal, he could have been a professional hypnotist.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess his interest in that kind of stuff went back relatively far. I think he encountered like Scientology. There's rumors that maybe he encountered some kind of process church stuff, which was a spin-off of Scientology. But I always thought that was a little more in like maybe a little bit into like the mid 60s, near the end of his like prison experience. I actually don't know exactly when he engaged with like taking Scientology classes, which in and of itself is funny that like, how did Scientology get into the prisons and like we're like approved to like help, prisoners? That's a little curious, you know? So yeah, maybe he is somebody that had a long-standing interest in the kind of like hypnotizing, manipulating. He certainly did fancy himself
think so.
a manipulator.
I think that like ways of, I mean, that's kind of how hypnosis has always marketed itself. And like, obviously, like, it's not like totally untrue that like it's a way to control people, right? And to like subvert people's wills. It's like, obviously, like the context in which that's possible, like, it's dependent on certain things, right? But still, like, he certainly was interested in that, I think that it kind of like, and that's the same thing that kind of drew him to wanting to be a pimp and stuff like that, like I think it was the same kind of basic interest. So but yeah.
And I think also, I don't know how huge of a factor this is, but it does like strike me that sometimes if you have somebody with that kind of megalomaniacal bent to them, kind of real narcissistic bag. And they're always rapping about how like brilliant and powerful, and they have this kind of dark charisma. They're able to manipulate people, and then you kind of look at them like flagrantly sort of doing things like criminal things that would get like a normal person, arrested and thrown in jail. And they always dance between the raindrops and like never get caught, never seem worried about like the pigs, or like whatever.
Yeah.
Like they're able to just do whatever the fuck they want. I wonder how even just passively from like people that are around this person and observe them, it just feeds into this idea that they do have some kind of like special power. Like, whoa, like it's almost mythical how they're like they have Fidel's moral vest, like they can't be touched, or something like that. And that can even, that can magnify the sort of hypnotic manipulative power of these people because the law enforcement is is not touching them. And it's like, whoa, they, even though they talk shit all the time and rail as being against kind of everything that like normie middle class like America fucking worships, they're just blah blah blah, like I want to destroy everything, like and then nothing happens to them. It kind of is like, oh, we should stick with this person because they got some kind of magic juice. They never get caught. And so, yeah, I think about that with Manson and with DeFreeze, like how he just escaped from Soledad and like for the sole purpose of waging a war on behalf of the people to save the children. That's what like Fajizo said, that like he just magically, it just sounds like he's fucking like Robin Hood. Like, wow, he just like bravely broke out of prison and walked for miles and et cetera, et cetera. Oh, and he's here. And like the cops aren't even looking for him. Like, it stinks to high heaven. So sometimes that the absence of like law enforcement crackdown, is can have a lot of consequences and beef up maybe even make somebody think who's a little bit like delusional that they really are like a god or something, like they like in some kind of, and I wonder also if that's twisted in kind of like the informant provocateur relationship with the authorities, where that's a common documented thing too, of like agent provocateur is getting kind of lost in the sauce almost as like a requirement of their job. Like the more kind of caught up in whatever they're infiltrating they are, like the more effective they'll be at like lying to people, right? And they'll be more believable. But then there's always like sometimes, whether it's like a moral quandary about something they have to do, or they're just inhabiting like the character so strongly that they even start to like chafe against, if any law enforcement people are trying to handle them, they might even kind of like chafe against that, or I don't know, go rogue or like spiral or something like that. Like, I'm not sure. I think in some cases that's kind of a thing that can happen as well.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think, like you have like a certain, you can do, I mean, I remember Louis Tackwood talking about that, like I can do whatever I want, and I will never get in trouble, right? And like thinking that you have like the inside track, like definitely it has that effect. And I think, it's like kind of meant to in a way. Yeah, I think they definitely try to cultivate a certain mentality. I mean, like, this is not a like groundbreaking observation to say that like the police like psychologically manipulate their informants and try to make them like dependent. Like the whole thing, like that tape we listened to of Tackwood where like the officer's like, I got this great, alcohol for you or whatever. I don't know.
And
some
he's
kind
like,
of
woo,
juice.
He loves it.
Exactly. So it's like, like we're friends, it's like
it makes me think of the Charles Manson interview that's like sampled in the first Death Grips album, where he's like, I'm the king, man. I run the underworld, guy. I decide who does what and where they do it at. You think I'm acting like you're running around with some teeny bopper? I make the money. I roll the nickels. The game is mine. I deal the cards. It's such an insane monologue. But he thinks he runs the underworld, guy. He decides everything. Who does what and where they do it at. And it's just like this totally megalomaniac. Even at his peak of running around LA, I don't think he ran the underworld, guy. Completely, but he was involved in drug trafficking and other kinds of sus shit.
I mean, and if you're already prone to like megalomaniacal delusions, if imagine like yeah, like, you know, someone tries to like shoot you and like there's no actual bullets in their gun and like they shoot you like point blank or something, and then like, you know, you already have megalomaniacal delusions and like, you know,
you're like, I can't be shot.
You know, yeah, like I'm invincible. You know, like, yeah, like there's it's same thing with like committing a bunch of crimes and then like getting let, like, you know, let out every time. It would feed, and you would think that like, oh, I run the. I mean, if you like have ever, I mean, it's unfortunate, but like certainly like, you know, there are people who have like mental illnesses, like, you know, paranoid schizophrenia or delusions of grandeur, that are all over the internet, including on Twitter, and like you can see their timelines, and it's always that kind of where it's like explain how this happened, like explain how like like, you know, like this happened, explain how I'm in this song, explain that, you know, like that type of stuff, like, so
yeah, it's often like I've been mentioned secretly in, you know, like on Nirvana's Nevermind or something like that, you know, there's like references to me in all of these songs, and it's like, oh, it's always like a very confident like you don't see it, like
exactly.
they're getting sloppy, they're getting, and you're listening to it like I can't discern any reference to anything, but like that kind of scary vibe.
Like exactly that kind of thing of like, are you kidding? But like, you know, if you actually like have some kind of like, you know, experience where like by all accounts like you should be in prison for the rest of your life or whatever, or, you know, you should have gotten a harsher sentence, or you feel like you know, it's not too difficult to fall into that. So yeah, I mean, like these like prisons were like, yeah, I mean, like Danny Trejo was like, he didn't even have a belt. It's like, you're not really like, there's a reason why they don't really let prisoners have belts like now, you know, or like they generally like you're kind of restricted from having one a lot of the time, because like, you know, you could use that to hang yourself or to kill another person. Exactly. So it just shows, you know, it suggested.
Oh, sorry, my internet stopped for. There, it's back. I don't know why it's doing
okay.
This.
All right.
Okay, there we go. I think it's back now.
All right.
Apologies, folks.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay.
All right. Word.
Yeah, I don't know if I froze. Okay, no, I think we're unfrozen now. Sorry about that, folks. I think we're unfrozen now. Sorry about that, folks.
Okay. All right.
Why is it dropping? That's crazy. Yeah, it's swinging around right now. Oh, fuck. Okay. It doesn't look choppy on my end, but the OBS is saying that
you're interrupting a bit for me.
Yeah.
You're interrupting a bit for me.
Yeah.
Much you're at a very slow frame rate. Very low frame rate.
Okay. It just reset to 0, so let's see if this. Okay, I think.
I can hear you now.
Okay.
For the time being.
It's doing a real spiky thing.
Okay.
Hold on.
All right. Well, anyway.
Anyway, we'll try to talk through this.
We'll try to deal with it. I'm trying to look into that prison. I did find an interesting article about its history, but I'm not sure if it's anything that like reaches to the present. Let's see. It's the architecture of liberalism and the origins of carceral democracy in a book called The Prison of Democracy. This sounds pretty interesting, actually. Like, I don't know if it's actually like directly relevant to Manson, because I feel like it deals with much earlier history, but it does talk about like the origins of McNeil Island, the McNeil Island Penitentiary. In response to the north-south orientation of the congressional debate, Representative Thomas J. Clooney gave an impassioned plea for law and order. This is like in the late 19th century. His argument, frequently interrupted by applause, insisted that Western states deserved a federal prison in honor of their status as full members of the Union. He argued that this equal distribution of American prisons was a question as an idea about state governance. In the context of this carceral citizen as an idea about state governance. In the context of this carceral citizenship, the public clamor for Leavenworth came from grand juries and city councils in St. Louis, Augusta, Huntsville, Chattanooga, and Dallas, where citizens gathered and passed resolutions to locate Leavenworth in their jurisdictions. Yeah.
So that's the construction of the federal prison system.
And including the one that Manson was held in. It talks about Leavenworth at greater length too. It's there's an interesting quote. Confiscating smuggled a 20-page letter to President Woodrow Wilson in 1913. The socialist newspaper Appeal to Reason began a series of investigations into the use of sexualized violence, electrical shock, and the beating death of Clarence. But like, this is like,
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, there's a reason why like there is such a focus on prisoners' rights. Like, these basically were treated as like unpeople who like were this bare life that could be like completely abused and like used for whatever purpose. I mean, I think the commentary in the chat is quite on point in saying that like the line between like trauma-based mind control and just like the kind of abuse that any prisoner would endure in this system like is somewhat thin and porous.
And I think people are right to point out like the shadow of slavery, like as a system of kind of trauma-based mind control. Not to say that like, slave owners like made their slaves like MK, like using coercive violence and like, domination over a person's freedom to conform their behavior to serve you, basically, at their own detriment. And, people have made the argument that a lot of the prison system and even like the police systems in this country come out of, both like a legal loophole to still have slavery or, like slave catcher patrols and things like that. There's like a dark legacy there, and that doesn't, you're right, like just go away immediately. And I don't know, I think, then it combines with kind of a lot of this like eugenics stuff that was popular in the early 20th century, and then going into the post-war, like this kind of drive for like mind control technology and various, the rise of the pharmaceutical industry, of course, as well, being like a whole grab bag of solutions for controlling behavior. I mean, Ronald Reagan had that like whole program about like the Center for the Study and Reduction of Violence, but it was like a cover for basically like Louis Jolyon West and his buddies to do like basically, predictive, I don't know, things up to and including psychosurgery and drugging and things on like young black men to like quote unquote prevent them from, or like to eliminate their radical tendencies, which are somehow like be fixed by drugs and basically torture. That was right up and through the early 70s, and it was a little taboo by that point, but still like just kind of sneaking it past everybody. But anyways. I think we're still bouncing.
Yes, I heard most of that. Okay. Now you're back. All right.
If you can't hear me, then that is an issue for our conversation. I wonder if I should stop and then relaunch.